You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series and syndicating for the A-List Online. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and what follows is an excellent conversation between myself and the very talented Keshav Dhar of Indian prog-metalers Skyharbour. The reason for the conversation is to promote their brand new album for 2018, Sunshine Dust. Let's have a listen to what Keshav has to say. Here we go. Here he is. How you going?
Hey man, how you doing? Hey Andrew.
Yeah, doing pretty well actually. Just leading dad life at the moment. Picking the daughter up from school and going to take him out for some fish and chips tonight. So I'm looking forward to that. Friday night seemed to be a bit special.
Nice. Give your little one a high five from me.
I will. How about you, mate? What have you been up to lately?
Not much. The day's just getting started. It's 11:30 in the morning. I'm a musician, so we do tend to, this is for me. Yeah, just getting ready to hit the studio. I'm recording a band today, so yeah, more of the same, really.
Excellent. I was really looking forward to this chat, and one of the key reasons, of course, apart from being an excellent band and you're an outstanding musician, it needs to be said as well.
Thank you so much, man.
Man, I haven't actually spoken to anybody from India that's a musician. I've got a lot of friends. My
All right.
a lot of mates that are from India or have Indian heritage. My youngest daughter, her godmother's Fijian Indian. So we sort of are familiar with the culture beyond the shared love of cricket, put it that way.
Right.
So tell me, that'll be my first question for you before I talk about the album. What inspired you to start a band? Because I understand you're from New Delhi, and I don't think it would have been easy to start what effectively is a hard rock or a heavy metal band. So can you tell me how you got things started?
Right, yeah. So this goes back to about the early 2000s. I was in high school. I mean, of course, I was into rock and metal music and stuff. I started getting into that when I was in my mid to late teens. But when I went to college, which was not in New Delhi, actually, it was in this very remote student town in one of the coastal corners of the country. And the scene there, it was a really tiny town, and there really wasn't anyone around who was interested in making this kind of music, because this was around the time, I think, that the whole underground gent thing, if you were familiar with that, was just starting to it was bubbling under the surface. The guys who would eventually form Periphery and Tesseract and these bands, and I was following them on social media and on discussion boards and stuff. And I remember just being like, I want to play music which is like this progressive, weird, experimental sort of stuff. But around me, even though I was in a college town and I was surrounded by people my age, people were mostly interested in just playing in cover bands or doing little beyond your Red Hot Chili Peppers, Metallica, just the usual suspects. It was anything more than that was just like, I don't really know where, and even like just the idea of writing original music was a bit of an outlier, for at least in the surroundings that I had. So I was just going online and seeing what I could do, and as it turned out, I came across discussion boards where these guys were basically one-man army situations, like where there were guys who were just recording their ideas by themselves and pretty much being the band, but doing it all by themselves on a computer, with sampled drums and just basically using the computer as their instrument to lay their ideas down. And I remember being really inspired by that. And I was just like, okay, listen, if no one's interested in like jamming in a band with me, the least I can do is just, put my ideas down so that at least I can, my creativity doesn't get stunted just because there's no one around, like that would be shitty if I. So I started doing that, and I started getting into, DIY home production and, bedroom recording or whatever. And yeah, as it turns out, I just started making material, because the simplest thing to do was, if if you're struggling to find material to practice your recording chops on, just do it yourself, right? Make the material yourself. So I started writing these demos, and as it turns out, of course, like they just happened to catch the fancy of a bunch of people at that time, because I do feel like all these bands that came out at the time were onto something really fresh, which of course made sense because that it went and became that new genre or subgenre or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so that was basically how I got into it. Just playing music by myself and making it and laying the ideas down on the computer. And then, of course, once it reached a certain amount of popularity and, an album was out, and then I started getting interest from people, rather than me having to reach out to people. People started reaching out to me being like, look, I really like your stuff. If you want to put a band together, just know that I'm available and that I'm keen. So then, of course, that led to the formation of the band and so on.
Your experience sounds a lot like everybody else's, to be quite frank with you, mate. I thought it might have been a lot more of a struggle insofar as, we just haven't heard a lot of rock music or heavy metal coming out of India, but I speak to artists all over the world, and your situation there, it could be replicated if you come from Iceland, Australia, even the United States. So it's comforting, actually, because it means that it really comes down to your own initiative, is what I'm hearing.
Completely. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Well, I mean, having said that, it's interesting. I was just having another chat, just before we got on this call. I was doing another interview where I was making the point that in India, I mean, this is not to say, I mean, before people get upset and think that I'm calling it a poor country or anything, I'm not. But the idea of, playing what is essentially Western music, Western, and that too, it's not like mainstream Western music. It's like pretty niche, experimental outlying, progressive heavy metal in the English language is something which is it's a thing of, well, relatively privileged people, I would say, in this country, and I am very aware of my own privilege, and I keep a check on it because I'm aware, like I've had. My parents, for example, were able to, put me through a good school in an English medium school. So I've been able to grow up being not just aware of my own culture and my own surroundings and the entertainment that exists in my country and around me, but also be in tune with what's going on around the world and be able to relate to it and enjoy it. And that's not something that can necessarily be said for a lot of people who, simply because of the language barrier for one, and because of the fact that, distorted guitars and heavy drums is not really something that you find in traditional Indian music. So for a lot of people, just the sonic and lyrical barrier can be something that they just can't get past, and that's no fault of theirs. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like it's a middle class and upper phenomenon here in India, whereas in a lot of other parts of the world, say in like the United States or in Britain, where especially when you look at the origins of rock and metal music, it started out as music of the not very wealthy, people who
working class in England,
working class, absolutely. I would still say it's working class here, because I think really privileged, really wealthy people don't particularly resonate with with the music or the lyrical content, which at the end of the day is largely about a struggle. There is a certain amount. We're not going to be in like a rock or heavy metal band and sing about sunflowers all the time. So yeah, that's just an interesting thing that I noticed.
Well, what I found really interesting about that is that I understand it because of the way the political exchanges people have on Facebook, Twitter, and God knows whatever other social media apps are out there these days. But you've really had to qualify your statement there, meaning that you come from a position of privilege. But I could bet, I don't bet, but the point being, without knowing you intimately or your situation, I know your parents would work their asses off to give you a good education.
Oh, completely.
And you just haven't, you've just been smart enough to recognise that, and you've been imbued with that hard work, that spirit of hard work and entrepreneurship, really, as well. I'd probably put it down to, because a lot of Indians have this wonderful sense of entrepreneurship about them, and you've got that in spades, judging from your music here. But I just find it interesting in this day and age, mate, where you've really got to clarify every comment and say, yes, a lot of people do, that music in general is a privileged thing to be able to create, no matter where you are from in the world, because there are war zones, Iraq, or well, not sort of war zones specifically, but parts of Iraq, Syria,
Oh yeah.
the northern provinces or states of Mexico where the drug cartels are running rampant, where nobody has any time for art at all.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So we're all privileged because we don't.
True.
If we don't live in those environments, we're all privileged. But yeah, it's. I think it's a pretty sad indictment on the way people attack musicians that you've had to qualify your statement there. And my own view is, of course, you don't need to, but I understand completely why you felt compelled to do so, because I think you were
right. Yeah, I feel like people are very they get triggered really quickly nowadays.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, and at the end of the day, we also live in a social media age, where so much of what we see and what we hear and the statements that we hear are in the form of text, and it's so difficult, and so much gets lost in translation there, and it's impossible to read into things like tone or actual intended meaning. I mean, when you read a sentence, and which can often be taken out of context as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't resent the fact that I have to clarify what I said, but it's just I just wanted to make sure that my point comes across. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, it does. Yeah, you're creating wonderful music, and let that be your voice out there in the wild, wild west on the internet. That's really the voice. I make a really specific point of not getting into. Well, I've had some political discussions, but I'm very careful not to appear partisan. So not to appear to take either side. Just try to be. And this is true for me, definitely. To be centrist, because as soon as you lose that middle ground, things start getting very extreme, and that's what is happening, particularly on the left, with these organisations that represent leftist interests. And I know I've seen Twitter swarms attack musicians, and I think it's sad, mate. I do. I think it's sad. But look, I won't labour the point anymore. Better talk about
I know exactly what you mean. It's one of the funniest things that I see coming out again and again is, hey, you stick to music, like leave the politics to, what exactly do you mean by that? I mean, what are we supposed to sing about? Like, our art is essentially, it's a reaction to, we're not just creating art or creating what we create in a vacuum, right? We're not like we can't just switch ourselves off from what we see around us. Like, at the end of the day, everything that we do, even the sounds that we make, are in some way a commentary on what we're feeling, our own emotions, or what we're reacting to, So it just is what it is. And I find it very strange when people attack musicians for having an opinion. It's like, this is, since the very beginning, the rock and metal music has been about wearing your heart on your sleeve, and as long as you're not saying anything hateful, I think there's absolutely no harm in just voicing and just speaking your heart out. I mean, you don't have to agree with it, but yeah.
Yeah, music's an outlet. That's what it is. You're spot on. It is a reaction to things that are happening around you, whether it's something that's going on in your personal relationships, or some people sing about catching the bloody bus in the morning, what have you, and then other people, of course, especially punk bands, have a whole political narrative that they stick to. But yeah, it's this bloody social media age that we're at the moment.
It's terrible, right? Yeah, it's so sad. But again, it is what it is. So we just we'll see where it ends up going of its own accord.
I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast fairly regularly, and he came up with a fairly good...
I love you. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so good, and the way he's able to articulate his thoughts and the variety of guests he gets on. But what did he say about social media? He said that it feels like, I think this, but I don't want to get the point wrong, but I understood it to be that he felt that social media demonstrated we were in the adolescence of our species because of the way we hide behind anonymous handles and attack each other. Well, I don't do it. You don't do it, clearly, but other people out there do it. And what's at the end of the day, you do not say to people online who you don't know what you wouldn't plant on a sign in front of your house.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
so yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's humans.
So let's talk about Sunshine Dust. I'm really enjoying it, by the way. I had it on in the car when I was picking up the daughter before.
Thank you. I'm so happy. I'm really glad you're enjoying it. Yeah.
Look, I do enjoy it, and it's probably it's highlighted by the fact that Tesseract, Periphery, and the Butterfly Effect, Carnival, to be honest with you, they aren't bands that I typically listen to, but I do like your stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do like your stuff, and I think it's the guitar work that you've put in there. And I think his
Nice.
songwriting is very. I think you've got your finger on the pulse with regards to songwriting. There's a lot of melody. There's a lot of really good hooks, and I don't feel like when I'm listening to the music on Sunshine Dust that I'm waiting a long time for a melody or a hook to come at me. So it's very engaging music.
Right.
So
Right.
do
Right.
you get
Right.
that feedback very often, or is it do you get lumped in with the Tesseracts and the Peripheries and the like?
Yeah, that's interesting. We actually do tend to get lumped in, and I think, well, I think it's easy for people to make, to sort of just put us in that category because, of course, we shared. Well, Tesseract's singer was our singer until this album, until our last album. So I can see why they lump us in with that category. But yeah, it was. It's interesting you say that because one of the things we took away from well, after our last album was out, we sort of just had a bit of a think and we put our heads together and we were like, what do we want to do going forward? What do we want to explore? What
Mm.
we're 2 albums down. We've put out, well, almost 2 hours worth of music. What do we have to say right now that we haven't said before? And I think all of us wanted to just get to the point a little quicker. Like we wanted to make music that was, we didn't want to dumb it down by any stretch, but we definitely wanted to make it more hard hitting and more
Mm.
concise and more engaging, so that, like, more, we wanted it to grab the listener like quicker, and we didn't want to waste time getting to the point, because I mean, we've done the whole expansive prog thing, where you take like 2 minutes into a song to really get to the meat of the song, which is
Yes. Yep.
cool. And we've done that and we've explored that, but we felt like we just wanted to do. We I think we were just at that point in our lives. Maybe it was the music we were listening to, that just made us think. Okay, let's write some songs where we don't need to spend like a couple of minutes getting to the point. Let's get to the point in the
Yeah.
first 30 seconds. So that was cool.
Well, that's that immediacy. I'm so glad you say that because that's what I found compared to the other bands. And I'm not rating on the other bands or heaping shit on them at all. They're wonderful artists,
Sure,
all those
sure,
artists.
sure.
But
Yeah.
your stuff's far more immediate. It doesn't take 2 or 3 minutes for something to kick off because oftentimes I get so many albums a week, right?
Yeah.
And I listen to them, and sometimes I think something's wrong with my phone or the media device that I'm listening to the songs on. But it's not. It's just that song 4 has like a 2 minute introduction or something on some of these
Yeah.
albums, and I don't really understand it to be honest with you. And
Yeah, no, no, I completely get where you're coming from. I think, we were having a bit of a throwback to, I think, Themata by Carnival, which was, of course, their most, I would say, their most poppy or their most
sure,
accessible record
yeah,
yet. Where, I mean, that album was just full of hooks, and those hooks, like, they didn't waste time getting to them, right? I mean, so, yeah, I think we were really channelizing a lot of our Australian influence
there you go.
on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is you've attracted the attention of some serious heavy hitters. So I'm talking about Chris Adler, who I understand you went on tour with you in
Sure.
Lamb of God in 2012, and also Marty Friedman from Megadeth, or formerly of Megadeth, has played on some of your
Yeah.
albums in the past. So
Hmm.
focus on the Chris Adler one. Did he just reach out to you randomly and say, "I love your music, guys. Let's go on tour," or how did that
That's
relationship?
ex- well, we didn't exactly tour with them. I mean, we supported them in India on their India leg of their world
Uh
tour, but
huh.
it was just the one show. But yeah, that it was exactly as you described. I literally one day just got and this is before it was a band. It was just me at the time. I just got a random message. I think on my SoundCloud account, because that's where I used to post all my demos,
Hmm.
and I got a message from this user called Eagle Adler or something. And I remember looking at it and being like, yeah, okay, that's some fanboy who, wants to
Yeah.
call himself Adler because, well, that's what we all do, right? Like, it's like so many people, in so many Indian kids, I'll see them where they'll just say, if his name is something, something, and he'll just insert the word Petrucci between his first and his last name
Yes.
because.
I've seen that plenty of
So
times on the net. Yeah.
it happens all the time, right? So I just thought this was another one of those. And there was this person saying, "Hey, really enjoying your stuff. I run a small indie record label of my own, and was wondering if you'd be interested in like having it." And I didn't really pay much attention to it, and I just sort of ignored the message until. I got a second message from the same user, and this time he signed off saying Chris, and below Chris he said like Chris@lambofgod.com, and below that he said www.lambofgod.com, and I think he was just sort of driving the point home, just like,
Yeah.
yo,
He
look.
wanted to get your attention. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a look at that, and I was just like, hang on a second, shit, okay. Yeah, then I responded to him and I was like, wow, thank you so much, that's incredible, that means so much, and of course we ended up not signing with his record label, but I think, uh, it definitely must have, he must have enjoyed it quite a bit, because I remember when Lamb of God announced the tour that they were doing and the fact that it was going to go through Bangalore in India. I remember, I don't know who exactly made the first move. I think it might have been our label who reached out to Chris, being like, "Do you guys have support?" For decided for that India date. And Chris replied back saying, "No, but I want Skyharbour to do it. Can you ask them whether they have a band, whether they can put a band together maybe to play the show."
Yep.
And that's actually, that is what happened. And I remember just like calling up all the guys and just being like, guys, look, do you want to make this happen? Like, I mean, let's put this lineup together, And I called Dan, who had sung on the album, and being like, look, do you want to play a show? I mean, Chris from Lamb of God is asking us to be direct support. Like, and he thought about it for a second, and he was like, yeah, that would be pretty stupid to not do that. So yeah, we did it, and that was basically it. And we've maintained a really nice relationship ever since then. I chat with him once a year, I think, at least. I share what I'm up to, and he's always very, very, very kind whenever I send him anything that I'm working on.
Mate, these interviews are always over far too quick, and I feel like as though we were just getting started, to be honest. But
shit, yeah, I'm sorry, I've talked your ear off.
No, you've done really. I wish we could do it again, mate. It's just, I know that there's phoners. You got another one coming through in about 30 seconds or so. But look, before I finish, mate, congratulations on an outstanding career, and long may you continue to do what you're doing. And I hope you come over here, mate, because I'll certainly be in the crowd when you come.
It's going to happen. There's actually a conversation going on right now about it, so It'll happen.
Final point, mate. Are you cool if I release what we've talked about as a podcast episode? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Please, go for it.
Wonderful. All right, mate. Well done again, mate. Thank you very much for the conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers, man. Cheers. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too, mate. No worries. Catcha.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, bye.
Bye. You have been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series and syndicating for the A-List Online. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and that conversation featured the very talented Keshav Dhar from the outfit from India, Skyharbour. Thank you so much for listening.